This video is called Transfer Your Best Game from Practice to Competition. Golf Digest did a survey and they asked, what is the number one gripe, the number one complaint that golfers have? And it's this: they can't take their best game from the range to the golf course. Now, that's not just about golf. Everyone has that gripe. They usually play really well in practice and they have a difficult time taking their best stuff to competition. And I believe it's this reason, that practice is one animal, competition is a different animal. And the farther they are, the more difficult your game transfers. And so that here is the rub. The closer you can get practice to competition, or what we call situational similarity, the greater your game will transfer from practice to competition. So the idea here is twofold. You have to put a lot of pressure on yourself during practice, because practice usually doesn't have any pressure. But competition has a lot of pressure. And so the idea here is, if you can put a lot of pressure on practice and put pressure on yourself during practice, whatever it is. Let's say you're shooting basketballs and you're basically saying, I need to get, you're on the free throw line and I'm going to make 10 out of 10. And if I don't make 10 out of 10, I'm going to do it again. And until you make 10 out of 10, you can't leave. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on yourself, because on the 9th shot, you're going to say, I got to make this 10th one, or I got to do it all over again. The idea here is put pressure on yourself during practice. Here's another thing. When you're playing golf, let's say, instead of just hitting one ball after another ball in a huge range, you want to make the range a really small variation of the fairway. And you have to say, I have to hit 8 out of 10 balls into that makeshift fairway. And if I don't hit 8 out of 10, I got to start over. The idea is, the more pressure you put on yourself in practice, the greater it transfers over to competition. Now here's the other part. In competition, you have to make it more like practice. Well, what goes on in practice? You're enjoying it. You're relaxed. You don't really feel about or think about the outcome. Well, that's the same principle in competition. You have to take those same thoughts that you have in practice and apply them to competition. Enjoy it. Stop thinking so much about outcome. Be in the moment. Kind of get a rhythm. All those things that really work in practice, you need to bring those to competition. And a lot of those same principles we talk about throughout the Mental Game Academy. But here is the answer. How does your game transfer from practice to competition? Make them similar. And the more similar you can get them, the greater your game will transfer. And when your game transfers from practice to competition, that is when you play your best. And that's when you have your best stuff, when it really, really counts.